This identification is the Berlin Wall, which is really a part of that idea of totalitarian states versus the democracies, or the Soviet Union versus the United States in the Cold War. And the Berlin Wall was built in 1961 by the Soviet Russians. So you can see here, like we covered earlier on totalitarian states, the Russians control Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Yugoslavia, and these other countries. And then the democracies, or the free countries, are in blue, which had free elections but were financially helped and militarily supported by the United States during the Cold War that went on for 40 years. So, but the Russians decided to build physical walls separating uh, the Eastern sphere from the free Western democracies. And so the first wall they built was called the Berlin Wall in 1961. So you see here the early building of it. You see barbed wire fence all along in the middle of Berlin, separating East Berlin from West Berlin, or Free Berlin from Communist dictatorship West Berlin. And there's the wall. So the wall was an ominous presence. And so the wall was heavily fortified militarily. The wall was designed to keep the people in East Germany and to not allow them to escape to what was called the Free West. See another picture of the barbed wire. But one thing about the Berlin Wall that should be understood was it wasn't just in Germany. It wasn't just separating East Berlin from West Berlin, or East Germany from West Germany. But there were other fences built all throughout Eastern Europe, separating it from Western Europe. Barbed wire fences, minefields, trying to hold people in these countries. And, mostly successfully did hold them in for over 40 years. So very unhappy for those people. This is a movie, Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which was about the wall. It's an old movie. Here's a newer movie, A Bridge of Spies, with Tom Hanks, which was about the wall and other issues to do with a down airplane, a down spy airplane for the United States, and the pilot who was taken prisoner. This is actually in the textbook. Gary Powers was taken prisoner by the Russians during this period of time. There's a very similar picture to that in the textbook, in which an American spy plane pilot was crashed and shot down and taken prisoner, and eventually traded back to the United States. Okay, so here's more pictures of outposts. You see the guard tower, and there were guard towers throughout Eastern Europe. And anyone who tried to leave and come to the West would be either taken prisoner or more likely just shot. All throughout Germany and Eastern Europe. So the people were very unhappy because they had different languages and they were not being ruled by the Russians for 40 years with puppet Russian dictators, Russian-influenced dictators running these countries 40 years. So there was quite a bit of dissent going on too. See, you are now leaving the American sector, which would be Western Germany, or the American protected sector, and eventually then just became independent Western Germany. That's one thing that is related to the Berlin Wall. It's called the Berlin Airlift. And this is where the United States was lifting supplies into communist territory to drop food supplies to Germans who were in West Berlin, who were struggling with very little food. So American planes were bringing them food, but the Russians were threatening to shoot these planes down. You see how low the plane is flying and dropping supplies, and the Russians did not end up shooting the planes down. Though some American pilots were killed in this airlift, 32 American fatalities. Like I said, the first conflict of the Cold War, that Cold War that went on for 40 years between Russia and the United States. All right, and one thing more on the Cold War, there was never direct shooting between the Russians and the Americans because they did everything they could to avoid World War III or even nuclear war. So it was more like proxy wars and smaller wars that were supported by the United States or by the Soviets. Okay, so that's the Berlin Wall. It was built in 1961 and lasted until 1989, until the fall of the Soviet Union, when freedom came to people in Eastern Europe in 1989.